In the year 2000, Lucie Blackman was a British expat working as a hostess at the Casablanca bar in Tokyo. When a wealthy customer asked her out on a date, she didn't imagine it would lead to the discovery of one of Japan's darkest secrets. Kim Sung-young was born in 1952 in Osaka. His father, who had immigrated from Korea looking for a better life, was a hard worker and managed to build a successful career, starting as a humble scrap collector to eventually achieve immense wealth as the owner of a string of pachinko parlors. His family's wealth allowed Kim the opportunity to study at private Tokyo schools, and at the age of 15, he enrolled in a prestigious prep school affiliated with Keio University, virtually guaranteeing his entrance into the university after graduation. When his father sadly passed away in Hong Kong, Kim, then 17, inherited millions worth of property in Osaka and Tokyo, and used some of the money to travel extensively, while studying politics and law at Keio University. In that same period, he became a naturalized Japanese citizen, and took on a new name, Seisho Hoshiyama, to hide his heritage, a practice that at the time was common among ethnic Koreans in Japan, changing it again to Joji Obara when he turned 21. He then spent the following years living the typical extravagant lifestyle of a young playboy, driving luxury cars and spending vast amounts of money on entertainment, further increasing his wealth in the mid-1980s, when Japan's skyrocketing land and stock prices launched the economy into the stratosphere, and property speculators made fortunes. Obara himself invested heavily in real estate speculation, gaining assets estimated as much as $38 million. It was during that time that he began frequently visiting hostess bars, which are typically Japanese establishments where wealthy businessmen go after dinner to spend time drinking and interacting with beautiful ladies, most of whom are young foreigners. Unlike what it may look from the outside, intimacy or sexual contact of any kind between hostesses and customers is strictly forbidden, at least as long as they're inside the bar. All the girls do is talk and listen to customers, laugh at their jokes, and even sing the occasional song on the karaoke machine while they have a few drinks, under the ever-watchful eyes of the bar manager, known as Mama-san. It was during one of his nights at the popular Casablanca bar in Roppongi that Joji met 21-year-old hostess Lucie Blackman. Lucie was born in September 1978 in Kent, southeast England, to loving parents Tim and Jane Blackman, and was the oldest of 3 siblings. She was described as a vivacious, friendly, and entertaining child with a sparkling personality, who was very socially able and never uncomfortable, whether she was talking to one of her peers, an infant, or an 85-year-old aunt. Growing up, she was one of those people who was always busy, always having fun with her friends and family. She graduated high school in 1996 and took on a job at a French bank in London. But her adventurous spirit and desire to see the world brought her to quit and join British Airways as a stewardess, which seemed an obvious choice, given her ability to mix with people of all ages, creeds, and backgrounds. Lucie started out doing short flights around Britain and Europe, but she quickly impressed her bosses and was promoted to longer flights. Although she was good at the job, the long hours and constant jet lag soon began to take their toll on her already fragile health. This, together with the bitter atmosphere in her house due to her parents' ongoing divorce, pushed her to leave British Airways in early 2000 and move to Japan with her best friend Louise. Lucie hoped to clear credit card debt and that it might be a good base for more traveling in Asia. So she packed her bags and left her hometown of Sevenoaks, headed for the bustling Tokyo metropolis. Upon arrival, the 2 friends found accommodation in Roppongi, a lively entertainment district in the Japanese capital, frequented mainly by foreigners. With its hundreds of bars and clubs, Roppongi seemed like an ideal place to find work, and in a matter of few days, Lucie was emailing home, letting her family and friends know she had found a job hostessing at the local Casablanca club. This was in May 2000. A few weeks into her new job, she met a new patron at the club, named Joji Obara. Lucie and Joji hit it off right away, the friendly atmosphere at the bar sparking natural conversation. And by the time he left, Joji had asked Lucie out on a dohan, a sort of platonic date between a customer and a hostess, paid for by the man, that usually ends by going back at the club. At the time, Western girls were especially popular for dohans, as being seen in public with a beautiful white woman was considered a status symbol by Japanese businessmen. The Casablanca club had a scoreboard, keeping track of how many clients each of the girls were able to acquire. Lucie wasn't performing so well, and that had her worrying, as she didn't want to be fired from the job she shared with her friend Louise. So when Joji asked her out, she gladly agreed. On July 1st, Lucie put on her favorite black dress and left her apartment to go meet Joji, arranging with Louise to see each other that evening, along with Lucie's boyfriend, a US Marine stationed in Tokyo. She then called Louise at 5 p.m., letting her know that they were heading to the coast, and again at 7, saying she would be back in half an hour. Though, when the time came, she didn't show, nor she went to work that night. The following day, Louise received a phone call by a man named Akira Takagi, who told her in perfect English that Lucie had joined a new religion and was safe and training in a hut in Chiba. Louise didn't really believe the man's story, but he insisted, saying that Lucie wanted to be left alone, and eventually hung up the phone. The news of Lucie's disappearance exploded like a bomb in the life of her family members back in England. After the initial shock, they frantically began making calls to try and get in touch with Japanese authorities and the British Embassy in Tokyo. Not having been able to reach anyone, Lucie's father and her sister Sophie decided to go directly to Japan to try and find her. But once they got there, they realized how daunting the task really was, to find someone in a foreign metropolis of 40 million people. Even more so since the local police didn't really seem to care. Given Lucie's age and line of work, they just assumed that she decided to go somewhere else and wouldn't make any effort in trying and find her. Where Lucie's family members did find help was the small but tight-knit community of British expats living in Tokyo. In a matter of a few days, they had a base of operation with an information hotline and began distributing flyers all over the city, hoping to get useful tips from the public. In the meantime, the British press had started to report the story of the 20-year-old girl from Kent who had gone missing in Japan. The greater exposure revealed itself a blessing, as it sparked the interest of prominent personalities, including billionaire Richard Branson and then UK's Prime Minister Tony Blair, who put pressure on the Japanese government to take the case more seriously, which they eventually did, assigning 80 officers to the investigation. Not long after, Tokyo police received a signed letter by Lucie, in which she claimed to be happy and asked to be left alone. It was quickly determined to be a forgery, but gave her family hope in finding her alive. The first real breakthrough in the case happened after Lucie's mother decided to hire a private investigator from the UK and sent him to Japan. He started interviewing club hostesses and managers in the Roppongi area, aiming to find elements connected to Lucie's case, and quickly realized that the same person seemed to appear over and over again. He was described as a 40-something-years-old Japanese man, fluent in English, who appeared to be extremely wealthy due to the flashy cars he drove and expensive gifts he made. He would usually ask foreign girls out on dohans, sometimes offered to provide them with a Japanese cell phone, which at the time was almost impossible to obtain for non-Japanese citizens. However, most of the girls recalled passing out during the date with him and waking up later feeling sick and sore. The man would explain how they had gotten drunk and lost consciousness, before handing them some money and telling them to take a few days off work to recover. When recalling their experience, the general consensus among the girls was that they probably had been taken advantage of by him in some way. However, every time they had gotten to the police, they had found the authorities weren't really interested in taking their claims seriously. Although the man was careful enough to always give different names, his face was well known in the local club scene, and the private investigator was able to have a photo feed created by his contacts in the photo imaging department at the British police. By October, a suspect was identified and taken into custody by Japanese authorities, a 48-year-old businessman by the name of Joji Obara. Searching his apartment in the seaside town of Zushi, authorities found hundreds of videotapes in which he can be seen sexually abusing unconscious women for hours on end, keeping them sedated with chloroform, after he had drugged them with wine laced with substances. Many of the women had little idea what had happened to them when they woke up. Some may even have believed Obara's story that they passed out after drinking too much. In his diary, the man allegedly wrote, "I can do women who are conscious," and "My goal is to have sex with 500 people by the age of 50. Despite the overwhelming evidence found against him, Obara always maintained his innocence, claiming that all of the women had agreed to have sex for money. When asked about Lucie Blackman, he initially stated to have never met her and knew nothing about her besides what had been in the media, before eventually changing his story a few weeks later, saying he did meet her on one occasion on July 1st, but always denied having anything to do with her death. At this point, with no new information coming from Obara, Lucie's father made an international appeal, asking whoever might have come in contact with the suspect to come forward with any information they may have. It finally worked. Among those who came forward, an Australian man by the name of Robert Finnegan. He had been following the story from Australia, and it reminded him of what had happened to his then-girlfriend Karita Ridgeway in 1992. Karita was a 21-year-old model from Perth, Western Australia, who dreamed of eventually turning her career to acting. In December 1991, she arrived in Tokyo, drawn to Japan by the prospect of lucrative holiday work, even as the country's economic bubble was rapidly deflating. Joining her older sister Samantha, who had arrived first to join her Japanese boyfriend and was teaching English at a nearby language school. Karita planned to stay for a few months at the most, during which time she hoped to save some money to put towards her acting classes. When she could not immediately find an English teaching job, she responded to an advertisement in the English daily newspaper, the Japan Times, for hostessing work at Club Ayakoji in Ginza, an exclusive Tokyo shopping district dotted with department stores, boutiques selling luxury European goods, restaurants, nightclubs, and, away from its main streets, hostess bars. Like for Lucie, her job consisted mainly in casually chatting with patrons. She had been working at the club for a handful of weeks, when, on the night of Friday, February 14, 1992, she was invited by one of the patrons to dine at a nearby Korean barbecue restaurant. What happened over the following 48-hour period is largely a mystery, but when her sister Samantha returned to their apartment late on Sunday morning, she was told by a housemate that someone had called and left a strange message about Karita, something about going away with friends for the weekend. On Monday morning, where there still was no sign of her sister, Samantha became seriously worried. Then, at 9 a.m., a staff member from Hideshima Hospital called the house to say that Karita had been admitted and was being treated for severe food poisoning. At the hospital, staff told Samantha that an older Japanese man, called Akira Nishida, had dropped Karita off an hour earlier and told them that she had eaten bad shellfish in Kamakura, an ancient seaside town that sits next to Zushi, south of Tokyo. Then he'd left without providing identification. By then, Karita's conditions were already desperate. Not knowing the exact cause of her sickness, doctors tried several treatments, but by Wednesday her liver failed and she slipped into a coma, and in a matter of a few days she was declared brain dead. So her family decided to turn off the life support machine, 3 days short of her 22nd birthday. A few days later, right before they left for Australia, Karita's parents were contacted by Akira Nishida, the man who brought their daughter to the hospital, who arranged to meet them at an airport hotel to give his account of the weekend he had spent with Karita. He explained that she had become sick after eating oysters and concluded, "I loved your daughter and I wanted to spend much more time with her," insisting that they accept a diamond necklace and ring that he had planned to give Karita on her birthday. Fast forward to November 2000, Robert Finnegan had just learned from the Australian news about the ongoing investigation over Lucie Blackman's disappearance. Seeing worrying similarities with Karita's situation, which he never believed to be an accident, he decided to get in touch with Japanese authorities, who, after having reviewed hundreds of hours of footage found in Obara's apartment, finally found a video showing the man sexually assaulting an unconscious Karita Ridgeway. According to the police reconstruction, after having taken her out on a date, Obara invited Karita to one of his apartments, where he offered her a drink laced with sedative. Then, after she lost consciousness, he filmed his attack on her, using copious amounts of chloroform to keep her sedated. In large concentrations, chloroform is toxic. It was this that killed her. In January 2001, Karita's mother and sister returned to Tokyo to identify Joji Obara as the man who had met them at the hotel that day and offered to pay for Karita's funeral. On his diary, police found Karita Ridgway's name alongside a brief note, "Too much chloroform." At this point, Obara was already being formally charged with 9 sexual assaults, to which was added Karita's killing. However, there still was no trace of Lucie Blackman. It wasn't until February 9 that Lucie's whereabouts were tragically discovered. In a seaside cave close to one of Joji Obara's apartments, buried in the sand, investigators found 8 packages containing a dismembered body, which they soon confirmed to be Lucie's. As Lucie's devastated family members returned to England to celebrate her funeral, in Tokyo, the police charged Obara with the abduction and rape leading to death of the young woman. Despite the large amount of evidence against him, the man pleaded not guilty to all charges on July 3, 2001, marking the beginning of a 7-year-long legal battle. As the trial went on, many details were revealed about Lucie's final hours. On July 1, 2000, Lucie met Joji Obara for lunch. Later in the afternoon, she called her friend Louise to let her know that they were headed to the seaside resort town of Zushi, where a Japanese couple recalled seeing her with Obara. Police found confirmation in the man's apartment, where they recovered a camera on which there was a picture of Lucie, taken on a beach in Zushi. In the same apartment, investigators found fingerprints and blonde hair, which they soon identified as belonging to her. Further evidence was acquired by tracing the cell phone signal, which showed the couple's movement that afternoon, and that the last phone call to Louise had been placed from the apartment. Obara responded to the newfound evidence, claiming that although Lucie had been in his apartment and they had dinner together, she had left immediately afterwards, firmly denying having anything to do with her death. He said that she was high on drugs, and so after dinner he had called someone to come and take her home. Police tried to track down this person, whom Obara named, but found out he had died, making it impossible to confirm or deny his story. Authorities were also able to prove that the man who the following day called Louise to say that Lucie had joined a religious cult and introducing himself as Akira Takagi was actually Joji Obara, and that the letter in which the young woman apparently asked to be left alone was also his doing. Draft copies of the letter, with Lucie's forged signature, were found in his apartment. Obara still maintained his innocence. During the trial also emerged that he had actually lost all of his fortune during the Japanese recession in the early 1990s, after years of reckless speculation. In order to try and save his firm, he then started laundering money for the Yakuza, the Japanese mafia, and was now bankrupt and in debt of £122 million. On April 24, 2007, 7 years after his initial arrest, a verdict was finally reached on Obara's trial. In a courtroom filled to the brim with journalists, Joji Obara was sentenced to life in prison for raping 9 women and causing the death of Karita Ridgeway. He was, however, acquitted of the rape and murder charges related to Lucie Blackman, due to the lack of hard evidence. The result was a devastatingly bitter disappointment for Lucie's family, who felt robbed of the justice they deserved. The following year, the public prosecutor appealed the Blackman-related verdicts, as crucial forensic evidence had not been heard at the original trial. Based on the new evidence, the court found Obara guilty on the counts of abduction, dismemberment, and disposal of Lucie's body on December 16, 2008. He still wasn't convicted for the rape and murder, as there still wasn't enough evidence. This was the story of Lucie Blackman. As always, if you found it interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you next week. Thank you for watching.